Hello and welcome to the next Notes from the Den, coming to you from a secret location in the South Downs. I'm sat here today in the Horsebox Den and it's raining. This might be able to hear the rain in the background. It's been fairly consistent for about an hour now, which is actually very relaxing to work in. I like the sound of it on the roof. It's quite ASMR in a way. So what have I been working on this week? This week I've been busy with the book. So I sent the book off to Dave, my copy editor, who came back with a couple of amends and a couple of sections that we wanted to restructure. He suggested a different flow for one section, which I hadn't spotted. I'm glad he suggested it because it's much better. It just puts a couple of ideas in a different order, and I think he's right. It flows a lot better. So we've changed that. I've added 7 new chapters. I mean, each chapter's probably only 2 or 3 pages, so it's not lots. But overall, I have added about 7,000 new words to the book. So, yes, it is a bit more of a weighty tome, as they say in book world. Yeah, I'm excited about that. So I have been typesetting that book using some software called Readsy. Which when I first tried it was very clunky, if I'm honest. But this time it's much better. So actually the process last time that took me 2 or 3 afternoons of probably a lot of swearing and a lot of pushing sentences up and down a page actually only took me 1 afternoon. Still pushing lots of sentences up and down and around the page, but in a slightly less frustrating manner. So that's done, and that's now gone back to Dave for proofreading, which is really good. And then the next step is to get it ready for printing, which is just involving some work on the front cover, basically, because you have to change the thickness of the spine based on the number of pages. Yet another thing I learned about designing book covers. So that's quite interesting. That's ready to go. So I think by the time I come back next week, we will be in a position where the book is probably gone off to print. But we'll see. We'll see. There's a busy week coming up. So this week I have edited the video all around niching, and that was following a conversation with a coach, a one-to-one client, and they were feeling a bit lost with their niche, and they had initially used their niche to define someone in a job role. And that had got them so far for quite a while. But actually what we realised is that their real niche isn't actually just that job role, because they do work with people who don't have that job role. So what was interesting is that the thing that joins them together is not the sector they're in or their age or their demographic data, but it's actually the feeling that they have and the frustrations they have and the place they find themselves in. So this is why I always get a bit suspicious of coaches and consultants who are working towards a persona, because it's just, I mean, it can work, but it just feels a bit basic. It feels like you're going to have to put a lot of work in to explain why someone fits into your persona bucket or why you think someone is like that persona you've made up. What I feel is a better way of doing it is thinking about where someone is now, and then thinking about the thoughts, the feelings, the ideas, the frustrations, maybe the actions they're taking, the things they're repeating, the things they're not starting, the things they're not stopping. And actually that can be a much more effective way to talk about your niche, because then when someone asks you at a networking event or on a Zoom call or even in your LinkedIn bio, you can describe the kind of people you work with in a way that makes people go, wow, that is exactly me. So I was at a networking thing actually last night, and someone asked me about how my book was going, and I said, oh yeah, it's going very well. Gave them the similar update that I've just given you. And then another person in that group said, what's your book about? And I said, oh, I've written this book called Reframing Marketing. It's a 3-step guide for effective and ethical marketing for coaches and consultants. It's essentially for people who are doing their own marketing, but what they're doing is they're selling themselves and their service, and they're feeling a bit disconnected from that. And they want to find a way of doing marketing that doesn't feel icky and horrible. And the lady just said, that is exactly me. I've been doing that for about 3 months and I just feel like exactly that. And can I buy your book? So obviously that's a one-to-one thing. Obviously doing marketing one person by one person isn't going to work. But the point is that just the way I described that book, because I used thoughts and feelings over job roles, then essentially what I managed to do was resonate with someone who doesn't identify as a coach and doesn't identify as a consultant. She's a freelance graphic designer. But the thoughts and feelings I used to describe the book resonated with her. So even though coaches and consultants put her in the right direction, she thought, oh, it could be for me. It was the way I went beyond the demographic into the thoughts and feelings that really resonated. So essentially, that's what I do with the podcast. That's what I try and do with my content. Although I do drop the names of coaches and consultants fairly often, it doesn't mean that I don't work with other people who are freelance or who are doing a mixture of jobs. It doesn't preclude people by saying it, but it's more of an interesting way of thinking about the niche. So that's what's gone out this week. The other thing I've been working on is recording a couple of other episodes from the back catalogue. So going into YouTube and finding some of those videos that are the more viewed amongst the ones I've made over the last year and a bit, and digging back up the blog and reading it out for the podcast. And that's been really good fun, revisiting some of those old topics. So yes, there's going to be more of those podcasts coming to the feed at sort of semi-regular intervals over the next few weeks. I'm going to space them out a bit. So if you haven't already, I would invite you to press the follow button wherever you're listening to the podcast so you don't miss those episodes. And I will be back soon with more updates from the den.